Welcome back to the Mental Toughness and Body Show, the podcast where we explore the strategies, mindset, and resilience it takes to perform at the highest level without sacrificing your health and well-being. So today, I'm joined by Melo Calarco, an expert in burnout prevention, high-performance coaching, and mindfulness. He's the author of Beating Burnout-Finding Balance. He's a keynote speaker and a corporate coach who's worked with some of the world's top companies, including Deloitte, PwC, and ANZ Bank here in Australia. So today we're going to dive into how you can build mental endurance, manage stress, and stay at your best without the burnout. Melo, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Now, here's a little bit of trivia. I didn't talk about this off air, but my past history is I'm a chartered accountant. And I used to work for Coopers and Lybrand before they became PwC. But when I was a graduate, I got two job offers. One was from Deloitte and one was from effectively PwC. And I picked PwC. So there you go.
Wow, interesting.
So let's dive into your journey. So to start off with, which I'm sure this is how you've become so mentally tough as well. Yeah, you've decided at some point, which you can tell me why in a second, that you're going to get on a bike and you're going to ride 30,000 kilometers. It's like, nah, I'm done. At 30, never mind 30,000. So tell us a little bit about why you decided to do that, what was happening in your life at the time. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how long ago it was, but tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was probably at a time where I was getting a bit bored with life, not doing too much meaningful stuff, jumping between jobs, nothing, that was stimulating too much. And I wanted more. I wanted to do more out of life. And I was always a keen cyclist, more, not so much road bike, but more off-road cycling. So heading out off the roads and heading there. So six of us decided to do it, to cycle around the world on our mountain bikes and predominantly do off-road. Unfortunately, though, as we started getting the maps out of Africa and India and Asia, all five of my buddies decided to bail on me. They said, "No, I can't do it. It's too dangerous, too hard, too difficult." So I stuck with the decision of, do I do it on my own or do I also bail with them? I'm so glad that I made the decision to do it on my own. So I actually did cycle solo around the world on my mountain bike, crossing five continents and
So this
living and
was in the
staying.
one trip. It wasn't
Yeah.
like you said, "Oh, I'll come back for a bit and then go do the next one."
No, one trip. Yeah, one trip. I did get very sick along the way, as you can imagine. Caught
Mm.
malaria in Africa, and that sort of decked me for a while. And then, got certain other illnesses because most of the time I was staying with indigenous cultures, staying with indigenous peoples and
Gastro is a big problem with that.
huge, yeah, huge, and dysentery, and you name it. I don't want to give you the details of all that stuff. That's quite ugly. But yeah, so and I also immersed myself in the spiritual practices. So one of the other big reasons that I did want to travel and immerse myself in different cultures is because I'm very into the internal arts and meditation and mindfulness and some of those spiritual practices. So wherever I could, I'd stay in monasteries and temples and immerse myself in those around the area. So yeah, definitely changed my life. And in some way, I'm glad I went solo because it was my trip, it was my journey, and I met so many people along the way and could spend as much time as I wanted to wherever I wanted to.
How long did it take?
About 2.5 years of that cycling, and then I actually met my partner, my wife now, in Africa on the back of a truck, as you do, where I threw my bike on the back of a truck because there's landmines in the area, and she was on that truck, and we partnered up, and then we ended up continuing on traveling, trekking up into the Himalayas, and so probably all together about 5 or 6 years of travel.
Yeah,
Great.
wow.
Yeah.
So were you in business? Did you put your business on hold, career on hold, or
Just in between jobs, yes. I was in between, pausing between things that I was doing. Like I said, nothing that was really too meaningful. And then that, sort of was the space. And that was actually the catalyst of me, learning more about myself, building my own resilience and, rising above adversity and all those challenges that I went through on that cycle trip, including machine guns in the back of my ribs and all sorts of crazy stories, surviving a storm for 12 hours meditating. So all of those lessons that I learned, I now impart in the coaching work that I do in the talks and seminars that I do.
One of the things that I find, I'm sure this is a global issue, but certainly with Aussie, man, we're both in Australia. Oh, you're in
Yeah.
Melbourne, aren't you? We're at the same side of town. So I'm in Pakenham,
Yeah.
Mornington. Um, but so certainly one of the things that I notice with Aussie men and the guys that I coach, we are not good at getting things out of our head and talking about like mental health and just the
Mm.
different challenges that we have. And I'm not sure how old you are, but I'm 57 this year, and I know for people around our age, and I think it's like mid 40s, and people go through life change, like the suicide rate for men is surprisingly high for
Mm.
our age group, because often there's that life change, whether it's change of job, change of relationship, that kind of stuff, and us as guys tend not to talk about stuff. And yeah, like you mentioned about like going away with five others, and that it would have been a completely different experience. But I find where some of my biggest growth through pain and through the different challenges that I've had in my life have come when I've been by myself. And I
Mm.
know that a lot of younger men too that have mental health challenges, they're drawn to these extreme sports as well, like your triathlons and ultra marathons and stuff, because it's this isolation and just working towards something at the same time though. So what do you think were some of the growth moments for you in being alone for, I guess, from what you're saying, about 2.5 years by yourself before you met your partner?
Yeah, I think there's getting to know yourself on a deeper level, like in many ways. So getting to know what challenges you, getting to know what triggers you, getting to know what pushes you, getting to know, yourself on such a deep level that you know what resources you have. One of the things that I did learn on that trip was no matter what situation you're in, no matter how challenging it is, you always have the resources inside of you to get through that situation. So you really have to trust. So I built a lot of trust within myself, built a lot of trust within my capabilities, built a lot of trust with my resources, and just really believing that you'll always have those in the present moment. And I still live by that now, no matter what challenges are going on,
That's
having
a
got
really tough one, isn't it? Because gosh, I've been working so hard on myself for, well, forever, but certainly the last 5 years, it's been really intense.
that. Mm.
I went back to probably the 3 years before that, maybe even more. Maybe it's about 10 years ago now. I can remember that the way that I was showing up for myself, I just wasn't happy with the way that I was showing up for myself. And I wanted to be a better man, a better person for myself. And I used to walk around my estate here with these incantations that, just like you're saying, everything that I want is in me right
Hmm.
now. And I was probably for about 2 or 3 years doing that. Sometimes it was every day. I was out there doing it out loud, and sometimes I'd be walking past people and they'd be like, what's wrong with this person? But it became such a feature of me that I'm going to say the word brainwashed myself that was true, but they're just words.
Mm.
There's that, you can have that trust that, yes, I've got it within me, but when's it going to show up? And how do I tap into that? And I think that's the real growth that I've had now, because I know what I do have in me, which is everything
Yes.
I need. And it's knowing, all right, what do I need? It's like a toolbox. And it's like, all right,
Yes.
if I pull out a Phillips head screwdriver to hammer a nail in to the wall, yeah, I can try, but that's not going to work. So
Exactly.
it's learning more about, okay, this is exactly what I need right now.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I've practiced meditation and mindfulness for 30 plus years. So my toolbox is quite good. I've got a good toolbox of different tools that I can use. And you're exactly right, pulling out what you need in that moment. And
Mm.
sometimes you never know like what situation you'll be in, and you don't even know which tool you
You
need.
tip the toolbox out and say, all right, well, let me try this one. That's not working.
Exactly. But then go to that deeper trust. And that's the same as any practice, really. You have to embody it. Like it's one thing to know something, like if you want to run a marathon, for example, you know what you need to do, you need to train, you need to do the periodization table and all those sort of things. But you have to do the training. You have to do the running.
Yeah.
It's the same as your mental training. to train your mind. It's one thing to know about mindfulness, and you can read all the books you like about mindfulness and meditation and different breathwork practices, but you have to do the training. You have to do the
Yes.
practices,
Yeah,
embody it.
absolutely. So let's talk about burnout.
Mm.
It's a term that's thrown around a lot and thrown around a lot now. And certainly you've lived here. Well, how long ago did you travel? Were you here during COVID?
Yeah, I was here during COVID, yeah, and that was an interesting time for me in the work that I do, definitely.
Yeah, so the COVID in Melbourne, for those that are just catching up on the other side of the world, we go to about 70 countries now. We were locked down more than any other city in the world. Six different lockdowns. I don't know, something like 300 days or
Yeah.
some ridiculous amount. And the impact that it had on people's mental health is just absolutely bananas. And so I think in some ways people have become less resilient. And I think people do throw around the word, oh, I'm just so burnt out. And
Mm.
it's like you're standing there looking at them. So really, based on everything that you've told me, like you don't even know what working hard is. So let's talk about that a bit because there's a real aspect to it, but I also think that there's a part where people say, "Oh, I'm burnt out," but it's like they're not mentally tough.
Mm.
They haven't really worked really, really hard. They haven't dug to the depths of what it is that they really need to get to. So when you're working with people and you're doing your coaching at a corporate level and so forth, how do you frame that conversation?
Well, first of all, it's differentiating the difference between what stress is and what burnout is. So
Mm.
really categorizing it. Stress, we can be stressed and we can still operate, we can still function. It's not ideal. We can be in that fight and flight response. We can work like that. That's stress. And if you're stressed and you get a good night's sleep and you're tired and you feel better the next day, that's not burnout. Like you're just stressed and you need
Yeah.
to manage that. Whereas burnout is, the end consequence in some ways. So, first of all, to define what burnout is, and as you probably know yourself, burnout, there's a definition by the WHO, World Health Organization. In 2019, they coined this, where it's burnout is a syndrome conceptualized as chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. So it's that cumulative effect that goes
Okay.
quite
Never
slowly.
heard that before.
Yeah, so and there's three criteria. I think it's a good definition, by the way. It is their 11th revision. It's the 11th time they have revised it. And the thing that I'd probably still change, it says chronic workplace stress. So it's not only workplace stress, it can be
Yeah.
financial stress, it can be relationship stress and all different stressors, but they're
And
getting
not in
closer.
isolation. It's normally the accumulation of everything that.
That's right, exactly. So there's this cumulative effect of this, slow burn, and then the end result is that burnout. And the three main categories, for the diagnostic criteria is number one, that sheer exhaustion, like absolutely you got nothing left in the tank, can't keep going. Doesn't matter how much sleep you get, you don't wake up
physical,
energized and
physical
refreshed.
exhaustion.
Total physical and mental and emotional, spiritual exhaustion. Number one. Number two is that feeling of detachment. So you're feeling a bit detached from your work, from the people around you, drifting off a little bit, maybe a bit more cynical and negative, complaining more than usual, moaning, complaining, whinging, all those sort of things. That's number two. And number three is that lack of professional efficacy. So something that will normally be easy for you. Oh my God, it's just too hard. I just can't do it. I can't cope. So that's the three criteria. And when you get a combination of those three over a period of time, chances are you're burnt out. And typically, the way to define it is you're just dysfunctional, that you just cannot function on your normal level. Everything is just too hard. You can't get out of bed. Maybe some depression or anxiety and all those sort of things. So I see a lot of it in the work that I do, obviously. And unfortunately, and when you mentioned there about COVID there, and also that identity piece around men. A lot of people came to me sort of towards the end of COVID after in Melbourne, our fifth lockdown or our sixth lockdown or whatever it was, because many of them sort of didn't really know themselves outside of work, like their work defined them. And when they had to sort of dig deeper into themselves and get to know themselves, not all of them liked what they saw, to be honest. And then they were, reaching out, "Hey, Mello, I need you now. Like I'm really struggling." So and most people won't reach out until it's like the end point, that sort of orange red zone.
Yeah.
Whereas I wrote a book last year, no, sorry, 2023, Beating Burnout-Finding Balance, as you mentioned. And
Mhm.
90% of the people that I interviewed didn't realize they were burning out until it was too late. until
Yeah.
there's some sort of physiological response, a panic attack, or some sort of physiological thing that they had to actually do something about it. So it's a bit of a shame. Ideally, we try to catch people in the earlier phases as much as possible to give them preventative measures so they don't burn out. But burnout is real, definitely, and there is a definite COVID residual hangover that's still
Yes,
out
still.
there.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely.
So without, I suppose, revealing all your secrets, but what would be a couple of tips that you would say people that are in those early stages, perhaps, and of what you
Mm,
just said there, and maybe they're feeling like they're maybe getting to that burnout stage, but they're not that completely burnt. We'll talk about the completely burnout people
yeah,
in a second. What are some preventative steps, like 2 or 3 preventative steps, maybe that people, I suppose awareness is the first thing, but
that's
then
right. Yeah.
in the prevention side of it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. The number one step, and this is the step that most people miss, is self-awareness, like really getting to know yourself and getting to know when you are stressed, what do I need to do about it? When I am tired, what do I need to do about it? And how can I prevent it ongoing? So I always say you can't change what you don't notice. So you have to
But
know.
maybe let's expand on that a little bit because self-awareness, like I'm a very self-aware person, but
Yeah.
it's only come from years and years of work on myself to know, oh,
Mm.
I'm feeling this now, and then notice that, and then say, okay, what does that mean? And I tell you what, AI is greatly helping speed up the process of understanding myself. But how would you how would you explain to somebody that here's you how you can become a little bit more aware? I talk to people about listen to your body, like
Yeah.
listen to, like if you're tired, and then I say reverse engineer it. Like if you're like I work with a lot of people with their nutrition, for instance. I say if you're hungry up to a point, just stop and reverse engineer that moment and say, okay, have I had enough water? Have I eaten too late? Have I not had enough plant-based food? Have I not had enough protein, et cetera, et
Mm.
cetera? So I get people to listen to their body. But how, or what would your advice be to how people can start to become a little bit more self-aware to know that, I am becoming a bit more stressed and tired?
Yeah. Yeah, similar in some way. The body is a good portal of how you are feeling. Many people, they might have their shoulders hiked up to their ears, they're stressed. And
Mm,
you say, hey, relax. And they didn't even realize their shoulders are up to their ears. So it's like, I didn't realize I was so stressed. So it is actually combining body and mind. And I'm very big on combining body and mind on how we can actually affect our psychology and our physiology. So the first step, like I said, that self-awareness piece, we can develop that through self-awareness practices like mindfulness, for example. Mindfulness is a great practice where you can stop, pause. How's my body feeling right now? How am I feeling right now? How's my mind right now? You can close your eyes and do a formal practice, which is a couple of minutes or 5 or 10 minutes, just to really sort of tune into your body and mind and how you're feeling in the present moment. And number two with mindfulness also is, the what's called the non-formal practices where you're more present in the things that you are doing. So anything from walking to working to commuting to talking to showering, all of these things are mindfulness practices, but very often we're not present with those things. Very often our mind is elsewhere. So we need to train our mind to be present. We need to train our mind to be here. In fact,
yeah.
research says that 47% of the time our mind is elsewhere. It
Yes.
wanders off and goes elsewhere. So we need to be aware when our mind goes elsewhere. And we also need to be aware, like you're saying there, with AI and other tools, to analyze where is it? Does it often go into the future? Does it go into catastrophizing? Does it go into what if scenarios? Does it create anxiety? Or does it go into the past and does it go into
Yeah.
a bit of depression? So it's that awareness piece on where the mind goes and what it does at different times of the day. So that's the first step is awareness. And then the second step is to do something about it, to self-regulate. So what do I need right now? Maybe I need a break. Instead of trying to push through another hour of work, maybe I need to get up and go stretch my body. Maybe I need to go for a walk. Maybe I need to do a 2-minute meditation practice or go make a cup of tea or drink water. So that self-regulation piece is the next part to actually take action in the moment.
That's really powerful. And I want to pause here for a moment because people can just also be listening to this and doing something else and not realizing that they've just missed a really great point. Um, so yesterday for me, it's a really simple example. Now you could just do things like go and have your shower, and you're in the shower, you're singing a song, you're thinking about a million things. It was when do we have a shower? Well, like first thing in the morning, you're thinking about the day, the stress, you didn't sleep well, you're tired, you don't want to go to work, whatever. At night time, the stress of whatever else is going on, and you're just elsewhere. And so there was a time yesterday I had a really tough day earlier in the week. I lost my daughter to suicide when she was 15,
Oh, sorry to hear.
a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And it comes just from time to time where it's like, boom,
Yeah.
hits you. Just some really tough moments, and a couple of other things collided in other areas of my life with friends and things like that. It was a really heavy day. And then yesterday was a really great day, and I was so ahead of everything that I wanted to do. And I said to myself, do you know what? I'd been for a walk to like reward myself, and it was hot, and I was hot and sweaty. I was like, you know what? I'm going to reward myself with a shower, which was, I don't know, it was like 2 o'clock or something like
Yeah.
that. I never have a shower at that time of the day. And I looked at it from a perspective of I'm going to have a shower to reward myself and to treat myself, to cleanse myself, all that kind of stuff, to just feel good about some self-care in the middle of the day because I deserve it. And it was being what you were saying, being present to why I was doing it and what I was doing while I was doing it. And
Mm.
it was a really interesting because I don't think I've ever had a shower like that before, but you just do it as a transactional thing. But I said, you know what? I've had a really good day. I'm ahead of schedule. I'm going to reward myself with a shower.
Great.
Whereas I could easily be, say, burnt out by everything else that's been happening in my life up to this point and for the week it was. So I think that's a really
Yeah.
cool point.
Yeah, and never underestimate the power of that, like that power of being present. When I was cycling around the world on my mountain bike there, like I said, I stayed in monasteries and temples often. And one of the monasteries that I stayed in Vietnam was all about being mindful of your daily practices. So you were allowed to talk there, but you couldn't talk about anything except for the thing that you were doing. So if you were
Yeah.
chopping the vegetables, for example, you could only talk about, wow, look at the color of my carrot today. It looks amazing, like those sort of things. If I'm eating the food, you could only talk about the flavors and the aromas. Even washing the dishes, you could only talk about, the scent or the temperature on your hands. And it made me really realize how not present we are in
Yeah,
our daily tasks.
absolutely.
And I practice mindfulness and I have for years, but it also made me realize that everything is a practice and is a meditation. Even just enjoying, washing your hands or having a shower. I often joke to, my clients, I say, when you're in the shower this morning, were you really in the shower? Were you saying, I love my lime and coconut shampoo this morning? Or was
Yeah,
your head already like planning, problem solving, making your to-do
yeah.
list? And quite often it's that. So we can't even have a shower. And people say to me, what's the big deal about that? But I say, the way you do something is the
Well,
way
I
you
do
do
everything.
everything. So if you can't be present in the shower or commuting or doing, and it's all about training the attention, which then
Yeah,
trains your awareness.
yeah. Yeah, and I noticed that just with the fast-paced world we live in, we are conditioned to multitasking, and I condition myself to multitask. So you can be, say, sitting on the, I don't really watch TV, but you can be sitting on the couch. You've got three people, they're all on different devices. The
Yeah.
TV's on, no one's watching the TV, no one's interacting with each other, and they're not even present with what they're watching because they're so all over the place and just go like scrolling, 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 and not present in what it is that they're doing, and then they're going off and doing something else, and like it's just where we're so conditioned to not be present in what it is
Mhm.
we're
And
doing.
what's that doing? Exactly. That's training your attention to get weaker. It's training
Yeah.
you're not training your capacity to stay focused on something for longer than 9 seconds. So it is all training, and that's where the awareness piece is really important. Like when it
And it's
comes
not
to
building effective relationships.
not at all. No, no. So it's a problem of the modern world. We are in this distracted world, and we
Yeah.
cannot, context switch. I do a lot of talks around multitasking and the cost of context switching. And when you're context switching all day long, going from one task to the next, it just wipes you out. You're just
Yeah.
exhausted at the end of the day. You've got no energy, you've got no mental capacity left. Yeah. So training your focus and attention is very important.
So when we go to now the poor burnt out CEO, is it then just a process of training them to do these things, or is it a slightly different approach?
Yeah, when they're fully burnt out, it's almost like rehabilitation. Like it was almost like let's get back to our fundamental self-care. So I've seen many cases in the work that I do. I coach many surgeons, doctors, CEOs, executives, whole range of different people, including athletes. And the ones that I meet in that red zone that are fully burnt out, it's almost like we have to go right back to basics and start building up our own self-awareness, self-regulation, self-care practices so we can stay in that zone there. You know, the worst case that I've ever seen in the work that I do is a particular business owner that, you know, very successful business owner, multimillionaire, making lots of money, working across multiple time zones. So
Yeah,
working
that's
UK,
exciting.
US,
Yeah,
Australian time zones, and wore it as a badge how busy he was. He was
yeah.
busy, like he was always working in the LA airport or working in the, you know, Sydney airport or getting to his, you know, office there.
Next thing.
Mentally, he was still strong though. It was really interesting because mentally he still had the capacity, but physically his body said, I can't do this anymore. His, you know, circadian rhythm, his melatonin, serotonin stopped producing testosterone. His body stopped producing, his endocrine system was shot, nervous system shot, pancreas, spleen, liver shut down. He was actually hospitalized in intensive care, multiple organ failure for a couple of
Wow.
weeks, and then in hospital for months. Now, this is a
Wow.
guy that's very sharp and very smart. He just kept going, but he wasn't listening to any of those signs. He wasn't listening to the cues of his body. He was not self-aware in that way there. So, you know, the sharpest people, unfortunately, can, you know, can still, burnout is not biased against anybody. Poor mental health is not biased against anybody.
I noticed with a bunch of high performing people, they can, particularly business owners, because like
Mm,
the person you're talking about there is just go, 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 multiple time zones, a lot of travel. They can confuse real energy and health with adrenaline
yeah,
and think, oh, no, I can just go, go, go. I'm healthy, whatever. You know, if I wasn't, I'd be slow, whatever. But it's actually adrenaline. And whether it's stimulants, I'm not, well, it could be illegal stuff, but like stimulants in terms of coffee, caffeine,
mm,
alcohol, energy drinks, all those sorts of things that they confuse with uh, real energy and real health. But no, it's just you are burning yourself out because it's that next win, that next sale, that next victory, whatever it is that gets the endorphin release for them, but
yeah.
actually they're really, really getting close to burnout.
Yeah, and it's addictive. That feeling's addictive, and they just
Yeah.
can't get off of it. They can't stop. They feel guilty if they stop for 10 minutes. They feel guilty if they have an afternoon off. And I see it all the time in my work. So I often say that, you know, being productive, sometimes we actually need to stop. The hardest thing for me when I'm working with a business owner or a busy executive is to get them to slow down and stop and give
Yeah.
themselves permission to stop and pause.
Well, I was going to say to you, in doing that piece of work, I imagine the hardest part is to get them to understand that by resetting these things and becoming better at this, they're actually going to get better outcomes and higher performing outcomes. But they can't necessarily connect with that because they're like, well, if I stop, it all stops.
That's right.
And maybe things do stop for a little bit. But how do you go about convincing them that the best part is on the other side of what they're about to do?
Yeah, I learned a lot. I've been doing this for 30 odd years, teaching mindfulness and meditation, different practices. I've learned it's a lot about the languaging. So it's actually about how you position it. So I don't even use the word typically when I'm working with a busy CEO executive, I don't even use the word mindfulness or meditation.
Yeah,
I'll
because
use
it'll peeve them off, particularly
yeah,
at the left brain.
exactly. So I use the word, you know, focus and performance and starting to use those things, but they actually have to feel it to experience it.
Yeah.
So they have to feel the difference and the benefits. So I typically will introduce a very short practice, like a 90-second breath practice, very simple, very easy to do, which deactivates the amygdala, you know, the fight and flight response, activates the prefrontal cortex, slows down the, you know, the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in and, you know, the opposite of the fight and flight. And then they actually feel it. They feel calm. They feel present. They feel focused. And once they feel that, it's like, hey, there's more to it. And then I, you know, slowly introduce more practices and starting to get a bit more duration or a bit more intensity, sort of getting a bit more. And then they, after some time, they think, how the hell did I keep going the way I was going in the
Mm.
past? But they actually have to experience it because otherwise they don't know how it feels to feel calm. They don't know how it feels. So they can stay calm under pressure. You know, they could be, you know, in a meeting and there's all these, you know, questions being fired, they can stay perfectly calm because they're
Yeah.
present. So it does take a little bit of language and sometimes I might need to back it up with a bit of science, like give them some science to make sure they understand the science before they do the practices. But once they do it and they feel it, they say, how did I survive? Otherwise, you know, it's honestly getting off that fast wheel of life, giving themselves permission to slow down, giving them, like an athlete, you're in the fitness world. An athlete knows very well the benefits of active recovery. They know very well to fuel their sport and performance, they need to take renewal breaks. They need to
Yeah.
renew their energy. So this corporate sort of athlete.
I talk to people about energy and having more energy, and I say to them, I can explain for an hour what more energy is going to do to your life and feel like in your life, but until you actually feel it in your body by doing the things that I,
Yeah.
telling you you're going to do, I said I can talk till I'm blue on the face. She'll be like, oh yeah. I talk to people. I say, imagine if you could show up with 20% more energy in the bedroom.
Mm.
So what do you think that could look like for you? And they're like, again, they can still just imagine it, but it's the kind of a light-hearted way, but it's true. Like, actually, that could be interesting. But until
Yes.
they actually feel it, they're not going to understand that doing the work is important.
That's right. And also on that note, when we talk about energy, it's not just physical energy. It's your mental energy, it's your emotional
Emotional
energy, it's your
energy.
spirit.
Mm,
So often when you ask somebody, what's your energy levels right now, they typically will answer with what their physical energy is. It's about a 5 or a 6. But mentally they're exhausted and their mental
yeah.
energy might be a 2 or a 3. They got no more capacity. So it's good to bring that awareness around, mental
Yeah.
energy, physical energy, emotional and spiritual, so they can actually start renewing all of those areas of their life.
When I first started doing what I'm doing, I thought, oh, I want to work with athletes and that kind of stuff. So I've been doing it 16 years now. But the reality is, your athletes and um, the really successful people in that field, they're broke. They have no money because
Yeah.
all of it's around everything else. They couldn't pay me. And I was just finding that I was getting more and more clients around weight loss. And so this is back in 2009, right? So people were in a different mindset then. We used different language then. And so I call myself a weight loss coach and that kind of stuff. Now that seems a bit offensive. And so, and certainly since COVID, people started coming into me not about weight loss as being their main driver. It was about healthy lifestyle because we were screwed in
Yes.
Melbourne. And then weight loss was either not mentioned or it was like the third thing that they would mention. I was like, oh, that was a really interesting shift. And now when I talk to people about health, come up with a really big definition of what health means so that you can identify what you want and why that's important to you. The reason I say that is that I use continuous improvement as
Mm.
part of my definition of health because I'm always growing as a result of that. So, coming back to what you were talking about there, in terms of it's not just physical energy, it's emotional energy and everything as well. And I think a part of if you're continuing to grow, they say you're either growing or you're dying, but if you're
Yeah, that's right.
continually growing, then that just lights up another part of you, which to me also helps with the energy because all of these things are just interconnected to make you an amazing human being.
Exactly, totally. In another lifetime, I probably did the reverse of you, Rob. Actually, I was a personal trainer 20 odd years ago, or many years ago, 22 years ago. And I very quickly realized that many of the people that were coming to me in my type of training and work that I was doing was nothing to do with the physical part at all. Like it was
Yeah.
actually, they're coming with chronic pain or chronic conditions or things they couldn't move through their body and stiffness and tightness. And I quickly realized this is not a physical thing. This is actually a mental thing.
Yeah.
And then I started designing some programs around, mental health and well-being and some movements. And I also teach Tai Chi and some other internal arts in the work that I do. And I designed a well-being program, which I then went and approached mental health clinics, psychiatric clinics, and I worked in psychiatric clinics for 18 years and delivered this sort of well-being programs. So that mental and physical connection there, sometimes they come that people will enter through another portal to fix something else. They
Mm.
think it's a physical pain, but it's a mental thing that we actually need
Yeah.
to move. So I love that connection there. And by the way, my programs were waitlisted in the clinics because they were so popular because people could feel it, they could experience it, they could
Yeah.
actually, move their body a little bit and get connected with themselves again. And it's all about how can I actually connect myself to myself.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's through physical movement, sometimes it's
Yeah.
through seated meditation, sometimes it's through breath work. It's all about
Sometimes
connect.
it's all of it, depending. It's like the toolbox again. Which one do you need right now?
That's right. Exactly. It fascinates me to no end. Absolutely
Yes.
fascinating.
Well, one of the reasons that I changed from like doing the executive work and that kind of stuff was that I realized that I was looking at like CEOs, these execs and directors, etc., and they had become used to a lifestyle because of the income and the position that they held. But they weren't really happy. They were happy with the lifestyle, but they weren't happy. And they actually weren't healthy. In fact, they were quite unhealthy. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I feel like I can have a greater impact on humanity by doing what I do now. And of course, people have a perception, and some people call me like a personal trainer, and I find that a bit offensive
Yeah.
because I do it so differently to what you would imagine as a personal trainer, right? And most of the work that I do with people is around what? Their mindset.
Exactly. Exactly.
And it's
Once you
shifting
make
that.
that connection, once you make that mind body connection, that's when the magic starts happening.
Yeah. Yeah. So, based on where you are now, what would you say is for you is important to you?
To continue the work that I do, like my mission is to help and support as many people as possible around the planet in the work that I do to beat burnout and find balance to perform at their best. I love the individual stories that I hear from around the world. It might be an email from someone in India that, the book saved their life, because something they pulled out of there. So it is continuing the work that I do. If anything, it's about expanding my reach. I have simple tools that I share, simple practical, implementable tools that people can take on in their life pretty quickly through the decades of the work that I've done. And for me, it's about how can I get that to more people? How can I let more people benefit? Because it really hurts me when I go into a corporate seminar or workshop and I go in there, there's 200 people in there, 100 people in there, and I look around the room and they, like you said, they look sad, they look exhausted, they look tired. It actually saddens me. So I want to help these people on a, whatever level I can, so they can actually still perform at their best, still be, happy people, but enjoy life much more with purpose and passion and mission.
Yeah, I hear and feel every word of that. What would you say is your superpower?
The superpower is connection, like making that connection and making my work applicable to everybody. So my work is coming from the spiritual background, the esoteric sort of Eastern practices. I learnt my practices through years and decades of the work that I did, the Eastern philosophies, but I also worked in psychiatric clinics of that Western clinical. So my superpower is bringing my message right in the middle or wherever I need to pitch it, so that person can actually apply the knowledge and actually do the practices immediately. It's one thing to know it, but it's another thing to impart the knowledge so they can actually take it on and feel the benefits immediately. So simplify. I think if to answer that question in a simple way, my superpower is simplifying the complex and make it applicable.
Yeah, nice. And so if we went the other way, what would you say is a weakness of yours that maybe holds you back sometimes?
I say yes to too many things, probably. I say yes. I'm just too nice sometimes. Okay, I can help you, sure. And sometimes the moment I say yes, I shouldn't have said yes to that one. That's going to take up a lot of my time. So it's probably creating some boundaries.
Yeah, yeah. I was about to say, do you find that like I'm a deeply loving and caring person, and obviously you are as well. And I like to think that I am extremely good at determining who's a time waster and where I want to put well, more time's obviously something you never get back, but I think
Yeah.
the energy management is super important. And what I find is that um, because I care and give at such a deep level, I am yet to meet anyone that does it at my level. So
Mm,
therefore, what that means is you don't get reciprocation, right?
yes.
And then that sometimes it can be like a dagger to the heart or the ego or the gut, whatever it is. And I think sometimes, so here's the thing, that's a strength. And trying to not think of it as a weakness because of how you feel. But I think the weakness of like from my side of it is how I manage the emotional fallout of that and to not let it control you and know that it is a strength. And you
Yeah.
have to find that you don't let that overwhelm you to then immobilize you in what your journey is, but it's almost like, well, it is an unconditional love, I suppose, in
Yeah.
some ways, but sometimes that can still leave a residue with you. But that's certainly how I feel it. I don't know whether that is something that challenges you from time to time.
Yeah, I've learned in the work that I've done, especially working in psychiatric clinics, I've learned to get energized off of a lot of these things. They actually give me energy when I'm helping somebody going through some deep work. But I also have to guard that. Also have to guard that
Yeah, so you don't
emotion.
take it home.
Yeah, that's right. And it's not about putting up hard walls. It's about just having my own processes. So when I say saying yes to too many things, I still say yes to pretty much everything because I want to help that person genuinely, from the bottom of my heart. But sometimes I have to also look at my own capacity, and what I can and can't do. And when I say yes to somebody that I know I can make a difference to, that's no problem. But if I say yes to somebody and I know they're not going to do the work, they won't actually do the work themselves, then it's trying on myself. So then I have to, let go of a bit of that stuff there. So
Yeah, yeah.
always that interesting dynamic.
Yeah. Well, this is a fascinating conversation. Let's talk a little bit about who your ideal clients are that you would like to work with, and perhaps how people can get in touch with you as well. I'm going to put the links below here. But yeah, tell us a little bit about who you want to be working with.
Yeah, sure. Typically, like when I think about it, it's not just executives, it's not just corporate CEOs, anybody that just wants to be the best version of themselves, and whether that is for their personal life, whether that is for they're an athlete. I coach Olympic athletes, for example, or CEOs, executives. It doesn't matter their title, regardless of their title, they just want to be the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
And that's where I come in. And sometimes it's about, just creating balance for them. Sometimes it's about, opening up that awareness. So
So it
what I
doesn't
love about
have
the
to be
work,
a high performing person, though. It could be like Joe Blow next door that
it
just
could be, yeah.
a version of them.
It could be. They just want a bit more out of life, and maybe they don't even know it. So it doesn't have to be, a high-performing executive or entrepreneur. I love helping entrepreneurs. I love helping executives. The great thing I love about my work is I have a diversity of clients, from top surgeons to athletes to CEOs to mental health clients, and I learn something off every single one of them as much as I, teach and share and impart.
Yeah.
So, but it is somebody that will put in a bit of the work. That's that, something will
Yep.
actually, okay, I'll give you a practice to do. You go try that
Let's
out.
do it.
Come back to me next week. Do it. There's nothing worse, even when you're writing programs, going back to those days, nothing worse than writing this complex, beautiful program for somebody because I was going away on holidays and you come
I
back and
don't
say,
do it.
how'd it go? No, I didn't even do it once.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so someone that's prepared to put in the work, and I, love helping as many people as possible, and finding that balance there. How they find me, through my websites are probably an easy way. My book's probably a good first point of call too. Beating
Okay.
Burnout-Finding Balance. I can
Yep.
share a sample chapter in the show notes if you like for people to grab onto. Actually, the first chapter is all about self-awareness, where I did have to meditate in a storm for 12 hours. So it's a very interesting story there. Um, yeah, my website, melocalarco.com, is probably a good place, and just have a chat with me. And if I can help you, it'll be an honor and a pleasure to do so.
Fantastic. Well, we'll put those links below. Just two more questions.
Sure.
I know you've been a TEDx speaker, and like people hear about TEDx speakers and so forth, but maybe don't know about it. Tell us a little bit about how that came about and how you become a TEDx speaker.
Yeah. Well, usually every year I set myself a big challenge. There's usually the usual goal setting and all those sort of things that I go through. It might be my physical fitness or whatever it is I'm looking at. So every year I set myself a challenge. In 2023, I set myself the challenge to write that book. And the book came out. That was great. It was a good journey to write that. Got published by Wiley. Wiley picked it up. So that was a fantastic experience. So then I thought the next year, what do I do now? I've written a book. What's next? So I had the TEDx idea in my mind for a fair while. And just happened that TEDx was coming to Mornington, where I live in Victoria, and I thought I've got to put my hand up for this one, and I did. And it was an audition process that went from I think 200 people initially down to like
Okay.
80 people. Then from those 80 people, 16 people got selected as speakers. So it was a
Okay.
bit of an audition process to go through,
Is
and
that
it
a like video type audition, or do you have to turn?
The first part was more the screening was more verbal, and then then video, and then a live audition on stage in a place there where there was 80 of us there on that day, and that got whittled down to 16 speakers. So it was a bit of a process to go through. And then by the time you get through that process, you believe in your message, like so clearly that you just definitely want to get it out there. And I must say, it was a challenge to train for, to do a TEDx, because I do a lot of speaking, I do a lot of
Yeah, yeah.
facilitating, and
So it's
normally
11
like
minutes or something, isn't it?
it
That
was
you,
11 minutes this one was, yeah. So the
yeah.
maximum is 18 minutes. The usual is about 8 minutes. And like now we're having just a normal conversation where we're talking, but in a TEDx talk, whatever you script and whatever you write, you have to stick to at least, 99% of. And you have
Right.
to, and you have to stay on the red dot. Normally when I'm talking, I'm walking and moving around, quite
Oh,
dynamic.
they want you standing on the same spot.
Yeah, you have to stay on the red. So in many ways, the TEDx was more a almost like a performance in a way. You had to
Yes.
perform, and every single word you said counted. Like it really, you couldn't waste words. So, initially I probably had a talk that was that long, and I had to cut it right down to
Yeah.
to make it really count. So really, and I rehearsed over and over and over. When I was
Yes.
walking the dog, I was rehearsing. When I was showering, I was rehearsing. So I rehearsed those words over and over again, so I can actually feel them to express them. So challenging experience is quite a challenge to go through, but I'm so glad I did, because it really helps you or myself to hone my message. Like, what is it that I want to share?
Yeah.
And the title of the message was actually of the TEDx was Three Mindful Breaths. So it talks about two experiences where I was the one that I was in the storm there, where I had to meditate for 12 hours to survive, and the other one when I had machine gun in my ribs in Rwanda, and I did three mindful breaths to help me to survive. So I won't spoil it for anybody that wants to watch it there. You have a little look at it. You can share that in the show notes too if you like.
Yeah.
But yeah, that taught me a lot to sort of like do that. And actually, not long after the TEDx I then applied for another talk, which is called a Pechakucha talk. It's a Japanese concept which translates
Okay.
to chit chat, and
Okay.
that was 20 slides that rotate every 20 seconds. So you got slides in the background, your slides that go through, and every 20 seconds. So your talk has to be spot on, exactly, 6 minutes and 40 seconds, whatever it is. So that
Right.
TEDx prepared me for that. So, and the more you do these things, the more I really believe in what I'm sharing, the more I actually have got
You
to,
get sharper on the
yeah,
message.
sharpen it up, sharpen that axe. So yeah, it's a great experience. Highly recommend it if you want to give yourself a little challenge.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I've got one more question, which I'm going to give you the final word in a moment. But thank you so much for the conversation, Dad. It's hard to believe
Thank you.
where the time has gone, but really great conversation, a lot of value. I think people are going to need to go back and pause and re-listen to some of these points again, because it's in some ways, some people might think, oh, it's like wishy-washy, hoo-ha type stuff, but it's real.
Yeah.
And if you think it is like woofy, fluffy stuff, then you're missing the points. And so I think you got to go back and look, reach out to Melo at the links below this conversation. So thank you so much for joining us today, Melo. I'm going to give you the final word with what's the best advice that you've ever received.
Oh yeah, this one I haven't heard this one for a fair while. I think I'd go with a bit of a quote actually that I've been using a bit lately, and it's not advice that I've got directly, but definitely from good old Charles Darwin. That says it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent. It's the ones that are most adaptable to change. So when it comes to that, mental toughness and resilience, just being adaptable, being pliable, being fluid, and just having that fluidity in life, because then nothing really affects you so much.
What a great point to stop on. Thanks so much, Melo.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Great to meet you, and all the best.